I would like to introduce my guest here, Justine Tunney, right?
Yes, that's
Pronounced
correct.
correctly. She is a software engineer for a big tech company that shall remain nameless. And she's also a bit of an enfant terrible in the social media scene who's got a controversial past. She says alarming things and gets pilloried for them. And that's what first attracted me to her. When I got in shit for being a transphobe, she stood up for me despite disagreeing with everything I said and wrote a big
for
defense.
the most part.
How would I address you? Are you a trans person? Do I just call you a woman? Do I
I'm a trans woman with a space in between.
trans woman with a
So,
space in between?
Yeah, I'm a woman, and I happen to be trans.
Oh, okay.
Although it's something I typically don't advertise.
Oh, right. Sorry, I shouldn't even have brought it up.
Oh no, it's perfectly fine.
Okay.
I mean, it's the topic of conversation considering your essay.
Yes. Well, we're inevitably going to get there. And I'm sure you're inevitably going to get there every time you do an interview with someone. But before we go there, and I have a good segue to get there, I want to find out from someone who understands what the fuck Gamergate is.
Oh.
Because when I hear of adults playing video games, I'm filled with such disdain that I can't go past it. But it's time we all know what it is because it keeps coming up.
Well, Gamergate is such an interesting movement, in my opinion. It's really one of the first times that I've seen, at least, that people have reacted to sort of a cultural Marxist coup of a subculture,
Right.
and actually were successful. Basically, what happened was people like Anita Sarkeesian, various other media agencies like Gawker, when it started to get interesting, on a single day, 10 separate gaming journalism magazines, like from these various different companies, all declared that gamers are dead.
Gamers are dead.
Yeah, like the subculture is over. It's too evil. It's too misogynistic. It's too sexist. It's going to go. And
So, but that's kind of a leap. To say that a group of people are a bunch of bigots doesn't necessarily follow that they're doomed.
yes, but that's what the media wanted.
Okay.
And, this naturally perturbed all, gamers because they were their readers. I mean, it's like, what sort of like media organization just like says, we hate you?
Yeah, it's
customer.
like ESPN saying hockey players are dead.
Yes.
They're over.
But, yeah, so there was a big movement. Everybody was really upset, and a big movement sort of formed in doing letter writing and going after their advertisers, which was absolutely brilliant. Like, it's a great tactic if you want to fight back against the media that not many people realize. And through doing this, they were actually able to draw blood on, media giants like Gawker. A Gawker executive, like a month or two into Gamergate, said that the movement had cost them $1 million worth of ad revenue.
Wow. So where did they get this assumption? And the criticism was people who play video games are sexist and homophobic. Did racist get in there?
I'm sure it's been thrown around.
But the big ones were sexist mostly, and then homophobic was soon after. And why was that?
Well, there's always been a stereotype of gamers that it's young men.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, young men like video games more than girls.
That's true.
When I was a kid, we'd play in arcades, and it was 99% dudes in there.
Well, a lot of it is because, boys will be boys, and gamers, the whole gaming industry has never really been politicized.
Right.
It's just been about, like, creating stories, and a lot of the people who build these things are men, and they, like, portray women the way men like, and which are being targeted towards men, and a lot of feminists think this is a problem. So people like Anita Sarkeesian, for instance, she started this whole like YouTube video series where she talks about how all the things in video games regarding women are evil and horrible. It's called like Tropes Against Women. And if you watch these videos that Anita Sarkeesian makes, I think what's really interesting is, to me at least, they seem profoundly anti-woman. And the reason for that is, just to give you an example off the top of my head, she'll take scenes of all these women in video games who are scantily dressed, and she'll say, these are sex objects. And it's like, is that really how you think about women? They also forget that there are games marketed to women.
Like what?
Like Facebook games, like The Sims. The Sims was a huge one. Like
Right.
back in like 10 years ago when that game came out, like every woman loved that game.
Yeah.
And the market, like if there's a demand for games that appeal to women, the market creates it. Like what feminists don't want games for women. They want to destroy the culture of male gaming. They want male games to be more feminized and to be a vessel for their political message.
But sorry, to get back to this Gamergate thing, it's just amazing how many crusades get wings without anyone questioning the fundamentals of the movement to begin with, you know?
Yeah, like, you know, people follow trends. It's, I mean, I don't want to disparage Gamergate because I very much support
the suffragettes. Sorry to interrupt, but the suffragettes. Let's question that. Should women be able to vote? Yes. Good. Got it. Okay, go get the vote, guys. But with this thing, women are not being represented equally in video games. That's like saying they're not represented equally in the NHL.
That's because the demand isn't represented
Exactly.
equally
The
in the
free market
marketplace.
has handled this. There's this implication that there's this big white pig man with a suit on and these puppet strings, you know, forcing these people to make these games and forcing the games on people. And these poor women are going, we want to buy games where we're Superman. Where are they? You won't give them to us. The free market will give you whatever you want.
Yes, oftentimes to our peril.
To her peril. Yeah, and it reminds me of a friend of mine, an actress was talking about the top superheroes of all time. And she tweeted this out or something and said, it's really depressing that in this day and age, we're looking at a list where only 3 are female. And you're like, why? Why should 50% of the top superheroes of all time be female?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
What's so great about being, it's such a male thing to be Superman and punch buildings down.
It's always really strange because the activist is typically the solipsist. They have their own vision of the world. They think of it how they think it should be rather than how it actually is. And they're always trying to impose their personal vision on society.
Yes, but the onus is upon them to prove that their agenda has merit. And this idea that video games have to look exactly like a woman's brain 50% of the time is insane.
I agree.
So that's what this woman was going for. And would you say that movement started out, had wings, and then the gamers fought back and have now won?
I wouldn't say they've won, but they've drawn blood. They're
Okay.
winning, in my opinion. And like, you know, the amount of money they cost these companies in ad revenue is surely alone worth something. And it raises the spirits of everybody who watches on the sidelines. It's like, wow, somebody can actually fight back against media bullies and, you know, be successful. And I think that's going to mean a lot for the future. It also instills fear in a lot of these media companies like Gawker. It's like, you can't abuse your customers like this.
Yeah, I guess. But now you got me worried that we're manipulating the freedom of the press and hamstringing them from doing stories.
Freedom of the press. What do you think about the role that they've come to play in our society? I would argue that they have an incredible amount of power that's completely unchecked.
Yes, I would say that they have, outside of Fox and talk radio, they have a liberal agenda, and they curb themselves when they don't like the stories because it doesn't fit the narrative. Like we just had this guy who shot 2 Muslims in North Carolina. The press is avoiding it because the guy was a Rachel Maddow fan and he was an atheist and he loved MSNBC. It doesn't fit the narrative. If he was a born-again Christian, yes, they would have loved to make that the story of the day. And you see that time and time again where they avoid stories that fit the...
Oh yeah, and if they hadn't avoided the story, he wouldn't have been a Muslim. He would have been an Asian.
Right, yeah, it would have been work. Remember there was that guy who beheaded his boss, this radicalized Muslim. I want to call him a born-again Muslim. And Melissa Harris Perry, I believe it was, someone on MSNBC called it workplace violence.
Workplace violence.
And then another guy on CNN said, also black, said, people behead for all sorts of reasons. That was his exact quote.
Oh, it's just absurd. Like,
so that is a media totally out of control. But on the other hand, it scares me that we're extorting them, maybe because I've been a victim of this, and forcing them not to do certain stories. Mm-hmm. Though the pendulum could afford to swing the other way, I guess.
Well, the media, I mean, like, I think consumers have a right to revolt against a media that tells them that they're evil and need to be destroyed, that their culture. Like, gaming culture means a lot to people. I was actually part of gaming culture when I was younger. Like,
can you make a video game from scratch?
Yes, and I actually have. I made a whole bunch of them when I was a teenager. But they weren't, really awesome.
Right.
They were simple games. Like, I made my own Pac-Man. And I played video games like probably 4 hours a day. I loved it as a child. And I identified as a gamer. It was a subculture that really meant a lot to me. And even though I don't play video games that much anymore, it really struck at something deep down inside when I saw the media vilifying this culture and saying that it needs to go.
Well, I would like to vilify it right now, but not because it's sexist or homophobic or racist, because it's for fucking children. And the fact that grown men, like I went with my son to this Era store, you know, the baseball hats, and he's not even into Spider-Man that much anymore, but he was at the time. He's 6 now, but he was 4 at the time. Around 6, you should be starting to get bored of Spider-Man. Not 60. But anyway, so he's looking at all the hats, and there's not just like Thor and Fantastic Four, but there's baby Thor. So his head is much bigger than his body, and he's got chubby arms. He's like a toddler Thor. And there's toddler Fantastic Four, toddler Thing, all these different guys. And none of them were in kid sizes. They were all adult sizes. And the kids section was way at the back, and it only had about a dozen hats. And he goes, why aren't any of these superhero hats in kid sizes? And I go, yeah, why aren't they? And you've got these fucking adolescent men, these grown-up babies, these wrinkled teenagers, playing a fucking video game for 5 hours with their Thor baseball hat and then bitching because some gaming magazine is mad at them on a blog. Like, fucking go get a job.
You know, as a proud millennial, I would have to disagree with you. How many hours a day does your generation spend watching TV, Mr. McInnes?
We spend an average, I believe, of 5 hours a day.
It's quite startling.
It is, but that I think that number gets skewed up by people, you know, housewives who have it on in the background, Fox News or
I would argue
America Today or whatever.
That video gaming is like a much more productive and, in my opinion, virtuous habit than watching TV. TV is just one way, corporations filling your mind with ideas and sometimes artists. And video games, it's a very interactive experience. You get to use your wit, your intellect. You get to socialize. It has all these things sort of wrapped into one.
You're right. I mean, when I'm totally zoned out late at night and I'm watching Law and Order, I'm not even following the plot, and I'll channel surf, and I'll forget what show I was watching.
Yeah, TV is a great way to turn your brain off, and sometimes that's what we want.
Yeah, it's almost like staring at a fire. In fact, I'm off at a tangent now, but David Cross went to, I'm friends with him, and he went to England for a few months, and this is back when we had VCRs, and he obviously has an incredible VHS collection, right? So I just raided it, and I got a big box of awesome old British comedies and weird shit I hadn't seen before and weird cult movies, all this awesome stuff that I love. And I put it next to the TV, and the entire time he was gone, I didn't take one of the tapes out because it was too much work to watch something good. I wanted to stare at the fire, so I just watched Law and Order and garbage the whole time. It's like I didn't want the challenge of being stimulated by good shit.
Yeah, I've experienced that same thing. It's quite unfortunate.
Yeah, you know, you've got a good point that...
But video games still allow you to turn your brain off in that same way. But you're still socializing. You're still having an interactive process.
But I know I sound like an old fuddy-duddy here, but is it really socializing? It just seems so inhuman. I mean, we don't talk anymore. It's such a cliche. The kids today, they're on the wigwams with the hoodoo hickeys, and they don't know how to fucking change a car tire.
Well, when I used to play video games, when I wasn't trolling people, like we would have like a first-person shooter, blowing people's heads off. And when we weren't doing that, we were saying, hey, you know, how's the weather? How about them Mets? You know, just having friendly conversations and meeting new people. And I made a lot of new friends throughout my childhood that way. Just people I met through video games.